Welcome to Born to Be Wide. Tonight's panel is about releasing your own music and all the different areas that you need to be aware of to do this. So we've put together a really diverse panel with different perspectives on releasing your own music. How many of you here are actually musicians? Right, excellent. And how many of you are looking to set up a label? Okay. And any managers in the house? Okay. God, I just realized how squashed together they are at the front here. So my name's Olaf. For those of you who haven't been here before, I co-run Born to Be Wide. And I think the best thing is really for the panelists to introduce themselves. So Karen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Karen Emanuel. I run a company called Key Production. And we turn good ideas into great products. So we actually still make vinyl, CD, DVD, and all the print and packaging, as well as merchandising. I've been doing it for 22 years, so kind of know all the pitfalls.
Shona.
I'm Shona Maguire. I make music under the name Plum, and I've been doing it for 6 years, nowhere near as long.
Matthew.
My name's Matthew Young. I run a very small record label based here in Edinburgh called Song by Toad Records, which sometimes we release things on a relatively large scale, but a lot of the time it is pretty close to self-release, just done by us instead of the bands.
Duncan.
I'll read you a mic.
I could have a shot for mine.
I'm Duncan McCrone. I work for an organisation called PRS for Music, and I work on the MCPS side of it, which is the royalties for copying and recording music. I'm also still a working singer-songwriter to a certain extent, and I make part of my living writing film and television music. So I kind of see things from both sides, but my main job is working in the sort of copyright and royalty side of things.
Hi, I'm Alec Gray from a company called EmuBands. We're a digital music distribution company, so we work with artists and labels and supply their music to iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, hundreds of digital retailers around the world. I'm also on the board of the Scottish Music Industry Association.
Yeah, I think what we should do is start off with maybe some of the more technical aspects of releasing your music and some of the hard equations, how much it costs, and what sort of things you should be aware of. So, Duncan, can you give us a brief description of what people need to do before they release music in terms of registering with MCPS and PPL, and what exactly those organizations do? And most importantly, how much money you could end up getting from it?
All of that?
Yes, in 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Well, I think from the point of view of those of you who are songwriters and composers and musicians who are out gigging live, the PRS side of things is going to be most important to you, because what a lot of musicians and writers don't understand is that if you're out there playing your own material, every venue you play in is going to have a license from PRS. And the money that's collected, some of it is due to you if you're performing your original music. To join PRS, all you really need is evidence that at least one of your songs has been played somewhere where the public can hear it, a play on an internet radio station, one gig that the promoter or the venue manager will give you an email to confirm that you played there that night. That will get you in. There's a £30 registration fee, which that's for life. And 6 gigs and you've got that back. So that's PRS. Also, any radio play royalties, you won't get any unless you're in PRS. Moving quickly through MCPS, my side of things, if you're self-releasing, if you're releasing an album, a record of your own material, you don't really need to engage with MCPS at all. But if you're putting any covers, if you're putting anybody else's material in, as a small record label, you're going to have to get a license from MCPS. I'm not going to go through all the detail just now, but fundamentally, we take 8.5% of the dealer price of a recording. That's the price the shop buys it in for. And that is the royalty that goes to whoever owns the song. Either, if it's unpublished, it's the songwriter. If it's published, it'll be the publisher who then pays the share on to the songwriter. As a writer, to join MCPS, all you need to have is evidence that at least one of your songs has been recorded and mechanically, commercially reproduced by somebody other than yourself. So if you are signed to a small label, for instance, that record label has to get an MCPS license, and if you're the artists, that 8.5% comes to you. But everywhere music's copied, whether it goes from CD to CD, CD to videotape to hard drive, every time there's copied, there's mechanical royalties due, and that's what MCPS collects.
Does that apply to downloads as well?
That applies to downloads. So if PRS and MCPS combined royalty is 8% of the download fee on the major sites. So that's MCPS. Very quickly, PPL is for your work as musicians and artists. On a recording, you've got two copyrights. You've got the copyright in the song. Now, when that gets played in the radio, PRS are picking up a royalty for the songwriter, but there's also a copyright in the recording of the song, which belongs to the record company or to the artist if it's a self-released. So when that gets played in the radio, an organisation called PPL is picking up a royalty for that. And of the royalties that PPL collect, sorry, this is so much blathering on here, of the royalties that PPL collect, half of it goes to the record label, the rights owner, and half of it is shared between everybody who's actually performing. The featured artist gets the lion's share, but if you're doing a session on somebody else's album and it's played in the radio, if you register with PPL, which costs nothing, then the royalties will be generated for you. I'll just finish by saying that it's far from being the sexiest area of the music industry, but the music industry kind of runs on rights, and your copyrights are kind of the currency you deal on, if you like. And I've found out through being a musician and a performer and a writer for 100 years that the music industry is kind of full of little chunks of money that are hidden behind couches and in cupboards and stuff like that. And there's people out there. It's not so much that they're hiding it from you, but it's. Thank you, Bruce. It's not so much that they're hiding it from you, but it's not always their job to say, look, you know what, we owe you another 8.5%. I always use the example of when I did Celtic Connections 2 or 3 years ago. My band, we did a half-hour slot on the Ian Anderson show on Radio Scotland. Now I got my MU session fee for doing that, but because they were archiving it and copying it and putting it on their website, I also got an MCPS royalty. And when it was broadcast, I got a PRS royalty. So three lots of money. People who don't know about it.
How much did you get?
Fortunes, absolutely. No, it wasn't much, but I mean, the point is...
Was it like thousands?
No, it wasn't like thousands. I told you I exaggerate all the time. Ali will tell you. But it's it's getting all these micropayments and hoovering them all up, and it can make the difference between doing your music at the fag end of the day and driving a van or working in an office during the day or doing it full time.
I'm interested in you saying that people don't necessarily, if they're not signed themselves, don't necessarily need to join MCPS, but is it not the case that if their music's being used in a cinema or an advert or being given out as a download for free, say by a company doing some promotion, is it not worth being a member of MCPS then, even if you've not got a deal?
Well, yeah, it can be. It's £50 to register with MCPS for life. A sync deal, like using your music on a TV programme or an advert, that can absolutely, MCPS would do the negotiation for you. So that could be worth it. In terms of downloads, you're only looking about 4 or 5 pence for a download on iTunes on the MCPS side of things. So you've got to divide your 50 quid by all these little 3 or 4 pences to see how many downloads you would need before you'd be into profit, if you like.
What's your experience been with these, with the different collection societies? I mean, just quickly, how much difference does it make to you at the moment in terms of getting bits of extra cash in?
I've had a really difficult time registering with PPL. There was some sort of glitch in the matrix and I could not register my stuff, but it's finally been registered about a week ago and I haven't actually registered any of my tracks. But I've written music for a few adverts now, so there should be some payment from that. But I also discovered the other day that I had misrepresented somebody on PRS, that I'd worked on. I sent a track that I wrote to him and asked him to sort of co-produce it. And then I gave him 40% of the ownership of the track by accident. Because I was trying to be fair, and I thought, oh, give him 40%, he's done a lot of work on it. And then I discovered that it might cause problems further down the line if I'm working with like agents for syncs and stuff. So it was a lesson learnt.
I think it's good to be fair, though, isn't it?
Yeah. But I still wrote the track, so I should own
Right.
it.
Okay, yeah, you could always
maybe
get
give
him a
him-
pint afterwards.
There's another way, yeah.
Share the money, don't share the rights.
That's...
So, assuming that people have joined these collection societies and navigated all the various ways of uploading things, what should happen next? I mean, Shona, once you've got everything written, you're ready to do something with it, what would you say is the next important step?
Money. When I released The Seed, I'd written half of it before I decided I wasn't going to have enough money to release it. So then I did sort of crowdfunding. But I suppose there's a huge amount of things. You need to get your merchandise ready. You need to get your artwork ready. You need to get your plan of attack for marketing.
Let's just focus on the music, though, for the time being. I mean, is there anything that's really important that you'd say needs to be done before you start thinking about when to release it and when to do your merchandising?
What, like production?
Yeah.
Production's very important. And mastering. I've never mastered my own stuff because I think that you're too attached to it, so it's better to get somebody else to do it.
So it's a bit of a black art as well. Don't try and master your own stuff unless you really know what you're doing.
Are there any things that you would say that are absolutely crucial, Duncan? I mean, wearing your songwriter and musician hat.
What are in terms of production?
Or just before you start thinking about the marketing and where you're going to get your money from and how you're going to pay for it all.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know much. I mean, Shona, we were talking back on stage about the crowdsourcing thing. I think that's really that's a great idea. And if you've got a fan base, and you were saying it doesn't have to be a huge fan base if they're committed people who have got a few quid. But in terms of my own personal experience, I paid for the recording of my last album and I licensed it to a record label. So I think,
assuming that people want to release themselves in the first instance, because probably no one's wanting to release their music just yet. So let's start by having a look at the pros and cons of physical and digital, and really what it costs and what you stand to earn. I mean, I think that you've already mentioned that it's good to have an idea of where your money's coming from, what you might have to spend. So, Ali, can I start with you? How much does it cost to get tracks onto stores like iTunes if someone's going through you?
Well, we charge a set fee based on how many tracks are on the release. So if it's a single 1 or 2 tracks, it's £24.95. For an EP, it's £34.95, and for an album, it's £49.95. In terms of streaming, Spotify works out on average about 0.35 of a penny per stream. So yeah, 3 streams for a penny.
Right, so say if you got a Spotify subscription, could you not just have your own song on loop?
Yeah.
You have a really short song and then just kind of leave your computer running all day. That would make you about a £5 over a month.
Did you ever hear about that band on Vic Galloway's show who gamed the PRS?
What happened with that?
They had a song that was about 2 seconds long, and it was just like 4 words, and I can't remember what it was. And every time Vic asked them a question, they'd play it, like really 4 seconds long, bam, 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 bam. And that was them playing another song. And they must have played that song about 20, 30 times in one show. Just to game the PRS, basically.
Wow, I wonder how much they got for it. Probably another £5 or something. Yeah. So if you've got an album, say you've got an album with 10 tracks, and I'd like to look at whether, the pros and cons of doing an album or an EP later on, but let's just start off with this. If you've got an album with 10 tracks, what would you use EmuBands to sell it and to get you into all of the different digital stores, what could you expect to earn from that?
I think it's about $470 per album. I would need to double check that. If anyone really wants to know, come and see me at the end and I'll check it before.
So to put 10 tracks, just to clarify this, you put 10 tracks through EmuBands as an album. How much would that cost?
$49.95.
Right.
So
you wouldn't have to sell very many.
No, 11 sales in that year.
Earn that back. Okay. Let's look at the other side of this. Matthew, I mean, and Karen, someone does a CD release or a vinyl release, what would you be expecting to pay for that?
It depends very much on what else you want to do in terms of the promotional campaign and stuff like that. So
just on the actual physical copy.
Just to pay to make. If you want to put something out on 12-inch vinyl, you are probably, depending on, I mean, there's, you can go gatefold and that'll push the price up. You can get a printed inner sleeve and that'll push the price up. But you're probably looking minimum about £1,000, and about 250 units is about the minimum run that anybody will do. The problem with doing such small runs is that the unit cost becomes very, very high. So it's almost impossible to, well, if you sell out that run, you might break even, just about. And if you go up, I mean, I think the most expensive thing we've ever released, we did a run of really nice gatefold records, and that went up to about 1,400 quid for a run of 250. And again, we were selling it at 14 quid, and that 14 quid covered just about the manufacturing and what it cost us to try and publicise the record, and there was no profit in it for anybody. So that's a bit of a challenge. The problem is, I think, you're always going to sell far, far fewer records than you think. Like, I mean, we've had records that have sold in the low to mid thousands, and then we've had a lot of records that have sold well under 100, and it's quite shocking when it happens. And that's a lot of stock to have sitting around. So you're always going to sell a lot fewer than you think. So if you're starting out, minimum runs are kind of where you're at, and selling them for anything more than cost is a real challenge. I think you can get proper glass mastered CDs. Again, there's minimum runs about 250, 300.
What's glass mastered?
Well, as opposed to CDRs.
Right. Okay.
It's just a higher quality product, basically.
Yeah, it's a different way of actually manufacturing it. It's a sort of high run manufacturing, or sort of single duplication, which is CDRs. Proper glass mastered ones, I think there's sort of, for a 500, the simplest that you can get, which is just a sort of CD with a label sort of stacked up that you can put in a plastic sleeve, is probably about 400 quid. A fully sort of CD in a jewel box with a sort of coloured print and everything, again, it's probably only about 500 quid. But it's kind of how long is a piece of string, because the more complicated, the nicer the artwork, the more fancy, the different boards that you can use, gets more and more expensive. But the flip side of it, which we've actually sort of come across a lot recently, is a lot of people are actually putting out seriously expensive product, beautifully packaged things. And this is when you've got a fan base, because fans still buy stuff and they still want stuff, and they're buying this product for 100 quid a pop. So obviously it costs a lot more to make, but then the margins that they're getting, and because they've got a fan base, these fans are immediately buying them, and they're making that money back and more. So it's kind of like they're doing much lower quantities than they would have used to have done to a big fan base, but they're selling for a lot higher price.
Do you ever get people that have got packaging that's so nice that it just convinces people to buy it, even though they're not that bothered about the music?
I don't know, but have you seen the new Amon Tobin? It was the most amazing piece of kit that you've ever seen. It's actually a flower press. It's based on a flower press that we made, and it's got sort of 10 inches inside it, and CDs inside it, and posters inside it, and everything's all lined up with the bolts that go to make the flower press, and everything's sort of put in it, and the wooden box itself was sort of laser etched. It's beautiful.
If it is your first release, do not.
No, don't
this.
do it. Don't do it. This is if you've got a fan base that you know that you can sell. But maybe people would see something like that and think, what an amazing piece of
But I think
product.
it's probably worth pointing out though that you shouldn't just jump to a release. If you're a new band, if you know a lot of, I've interviewed a few people for the blog that I write. And bands have said to me on a few occasions that one of the first mistakes that bands make is they go straight into the studio, they go straight to record something. And actually, I think nowadays with things like, all of the upload options you've got with things like SoundCloud and Bandcamp and that, you're probably best off testing the water with a few freebies here and there, just to kind of get an idea for what kind of a fan base you've got. Because that makes it much, much easier to make an educated guess as to how many of anything you should make, or whether or not you've got enough people who are going to buy it, or anything like that. So don't jump straight into the release. Just record a couple of freebies, put some stuff out there, put it on your Facebook page, see if anybody gives a shit first. And it's really valuable information, I think.
Can I say as well, there's something that is occurred to me time and time again when, it's not so common now because most stuff comes to you via SoundCloud or Bandcamp, but when people gave you a CD, a demo CD with 3 tracks, the best track was hardly ever the first track. So it's really worth actually bouncing your songs off people, whether you do it in person or whether you check which ones have been listened to most on SoundCloud, and really getting a feeling for which ones people like the most, because you're not necessarily the best judge of that. If you're putting out, say, something like a 7-inch single, which a lot of people are doing now with a download code to go with it, how much does that cost?
I've got to look it up. Don't know so many prices.
God,
I don't know them all
giving you
off
so
my
much
head.
time to go through your phone. Yeah.
For a run of 250, it's usually about 700 or 800 quid, I think, isn't it? Depending on how nice a thing you make.
So here you go, 7-inch single, full colour sleeve, no spine, no paper bag, £635. So, yeah,
That's
you're right.
no spine, no paper bag.
Oh, but a full colour sleeve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting that that's crap. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Sounds lovely.
A simple release.
Do you charge VAT on top of that?
Yes, of course.
Okay, I hate that. So it's actually more like 700 quid, isn't it? Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when you do that, because not everyone might have a record player, or they might just want it because it looks nice. It's usually the case with me, but I also want to listen to it on my iPod. How much extra does it cost if you've got the tracks, a download code on the?
Well, I'm at the moment I'm speaking for my company, but we're actually going to doing a deal at the moment where we will give you the download codes as part of the package deal. But apart from that, off the top of my head, it's I think it's about £50 to get the codes, and then obviously you have to pay for the stickers of the actual bits of card, which again vary if you want a 1-colour or 4-colour. Cheap as chips, you print it out on an Excel spreadsheet, cut it up, and stick it in the record.
There are a number of different ways of doing it, though. Yeah. I mean, you can either ask the manufacturing company to do it themselves. In the past, we've put it on Bandcamp and just printed it out on our printer at home, chopped it up, and just sent them a bunch of little things, and they've packed it in for us for about 30 quid. It's not the nicest thing in the world to do, to be honest. Or you can go to a company like Drop Cards, and they'll just send you a stack of cards, and they're really nice, but they're a bit more expensive. I can't remember. It's at least 100 quid, I think, for a run of 250 of those. But they are really nice, but it's extra
Again,
cash.
you can do. I think with anything, I think what you're saying is really right. Is you've got to know your audience, and if you've got an audience, and what you can afford, and what the audience will pay for your product, and sometimes you do want to just do it yourself as reasonably as possible, but then sometimes you want to make it look more professional, but then you have to spend more money. And it's just it's a balance that you will learn as you go on, I guess.
I'm just kind of adding this up. So I mean, basically, if someone released their album through you, and it's 50 quid, and it's like 50 quid to get it added on to a 7-inch. Is there a way of them kind of getting the best of both worlds, that you could you could give someone, is it possible for someone to get some kind of code from you, or?
In terms of redeem codes,
Yeah.
or they're possible through. We deal directly with retailers. We don't really do a direct-to-fan type solution. There's companies out there like Music Glue that can sort that out. You can get redeem cards from iTunes, but you need to be talking about getting like 10,000 at a time. So you need big quantities to do it through the retailers themselves.
So, in terms of how you choose to release, how many CDs you press, or whether you sell your music online, what would your suggestion be, Shona? In your experience, what works well with that?
It depends on the CDs sell really well at gigs, and online stuff, people don't want to go home and then look at, well, maybe they do, but I don't get that many after playing a gig that I go, oh, wow, loads of people have come online and bought stuff, so the CDs work for that.
Duncan, in your experience, do you find that the CDs fly off the merch stand when you're doing gigs, or is it downloads, people after the downloads instead?
Well, in my own experience, when I gig, it's kind of on the kind of traditional music circuit. It's kind of Celtic-y singer-songwriter stuff I do. I play to small audiences, maybe 40 or 50 people, and I'll be disappointed if I don't sell 8 or 9 CDs on a night. Now, there's two angles to it. If you're a gigging band and you're out a lot, it's merch, it's merchandise. If you can make a CD album for a couple of quid, and you can sell it for £5 or even £10, you don't have to do that many before you're into profit, and you don't need to spend that much on it unless you're more concerned with the profile aspect of it, and promoting it to reviewers and to record labels and what have you. But I think in my own case, downloads. I don't sell huge numbers anyway. Touring bands, they sell serious numbers. Bands like the Treacherous Orchestra and these when they go on tour, the merch and the CDs are a big part of it. But also they have a huge online presence as well, so they'll sell a lot of downloads and they'll be streamed a lot too. But when you're out there working, as Shona was just sort of saying there, people, it's the heat of the minute. People sometimes buy a CD, they don't know why they're buying it, they're just caught up in the frenzy of the whole thing, and they'll buy a CD the next morning and think, what the? But
how much do you sell your CDs for at gigs?
I sell mine for £10 because I think that's a good contract with the audience. It's the brown pound, they come up with the brown note and you give them a CD. When you start looking at £9...
I thought it was something completely different.
I know you did. As the words left my lips, I thought I'll regret this. But if it's the £10 note, if you start footering about with pound coins, people lose interest. I think it's just £10 CD, and that works well. That works well for me.
And as if you're doing 500 CDs for £500 each, only 50 CDs, and you've kind of got your manufacturing.
You've got your money back. It's not you'll if you're out working and you're gigging and you've got walk-up sales, you can make a profit out of having a CD, but you need the online. Nowadays, it's so easy to get your music up online, and companies like EmuBands will help you to do it. The streaming and the downloading is vitally important.
Can I just ask how many people still buy CDs?
Wow.
And how many of you buy vinyl? Wow. And how many of you don't buy CDs, vinyl, but buy downloads? It's download only, okay. And
You've all made me very happy.
Who doesn't buy any music at all and just, we'll turn the cameras off.
Could I just add a quick word of warning? Because amongst it depends on all of this stuff. I think depends, like you're saying, on the kind of music that you make. It's different for different genres a lot. Certainly in the kind of music that we're involved with, everybody's talking about the revival of vinyl, and all the bands want vinyl. I'm a music nerd. I want to make vinyl. Their closest fans, who are the ones who they know the best, want vinyl, and it still sells a lot slower than CDs, even amongst a crowd like our lot who are very, very pro vinyl. Tapes are a great option if you don't want to just put a download up. because a download, just put it up digitally and it just feels like it's disappeared into the ether. It doesn't feel like a proper release. Tapes are a good option if you want to do something cheap in a very, very short run, and to have something nice to show for it.
Like a cassette.
Yeah, cassette tapes.
Who's got a cassette player in here? Wow.
It's the future.
Whose parents? Who knows someone with a cassette player? Right. Okay. So that's good shout. You could sell it to about a third of the audience.
No, but it's really good for doing cheap runs.
And how much do they cost?
I've never produced tapes myself, but I know a lot of the small garage rock labels that I follow are doing a lot of tape releases at the moment, and they're really good, I think. Anyway, it's just nice to have something to show, and you don't have to break the bank.
I think it's interesting.
But CDs are still like financially so much more viable, I think.
And at the moment, I have to say, vinyl is an absolute nightmare to produce because everyone's desperately wants to make it, and all the vinyl pressing plants can't make it quick enough.
Are there any plants in Britain?
Yes.
In Scotland?
No.
It's the old EMI plan.
What's Creative Scotland when you did them?
There's not any presses left around to buy. All the spare presses that are actually around have been bought up by all the vinyl plants that are still making, because they need them for the spare parts because they don't make them anymore.
There's other things as well, I suppose, like drop cards. I mean, you mentioned those earlier on. How much was it? 500, 400 quid?
I don't, off the top of my head, remember, but we paid the last project we used drop cards for. We pressed about 750 copies of a 12-inch record, and I think it cost us a couple of £100 to get a drop card made for each one of those. And like I say, it's just a nicer thing to have than a little Bandcamp cutout kind of thing.
I don't know the price off the top of my head, but they are on our website somewhere. So do have a look. One little anecdote that I heard recently was somebody phoned up the record label to complain that their record did not have a drop card in it, and how the hell were they supposed to listen to it? True story.
Nice. Just for those of you who don't know, a drop card is like a wee card with a download code on it, but you can put a picture on it, or you can hand them out at gigs, or sell them at gigs if you like as well. Is there still a lot of demand for them just on their own rather than as accompanying vinyl?
We tend to do them with vinyl all the time, to be honest with you.
One of the things that occurred to me as well is that there might be certain legal requirements before you get something pressed up. I mean, do you have to be an MCPS member if you're getting vinyl pressed?
We have to see licenses from people before we're allowed to press. And there's certain, and again, you'll be able to sort of tell people more. There's certain sort of levels of joining the MCPS as to whether you get kind of a blanket license. It's AP1.
How does it work, Duncan?
He knows all of that.
Resident expert.
Well, basically, as Karen was saying, because the manufacturer is actually making the copies, they have to be sure that they're not making kind of pirate copies, if you like, in good faith. So what happens is that in the simplest form, the record label, whether it's an artist label or it's an actual established label, they apply to MCPS. They tell us what they're pressing. If it's got our members' works on it, we charge a kind of pro rata royalty. So if you've got 10 tracks in your album and only one of them is an MCPS, a cover, then it'll be 1/10 of the royalty you'll pay. When you apply for the license, we give you a reference number, and you give that to the manufacturer, and that, because there's a code of practice, that we have agreed with the manufacturers. When they see that reference number, they can go ahead. So you're not going to get held up. If you're self-releasing and it's all your own material, then you don't. And if you're not an MCPS member, then you don't actually need an MCPS license. But if you go to a pressing plant and say, "Look, these are all my own songs," and you sneaked a kind of obscure Frank Zappa song in there, and you haven't told the pressing plant, then you're compromising them. So they ask to see something from MCPS just to say that we're not making a claim on it. And it's just a paper trail. You go into the website, you apply for it, and you get back a bit of paper saying, this is not a license, we don't represent these songs. When the pressing plant sees that, they can go ahead knowing that MCPS indemnifies them, if you like, from any kind of action. So it's pretty straightforward.
Is there a downside to people just registering them with you then, and just saying, right, okay, well, we'll join MCPS? I mean, is there any disadvantage, or why would someone go to all that trouble to get an indemnification from you to take to the pressing plant?
Well, usually because the pressing plant asks for it, because the pressing plant should ask for it. There's, in terms of a benefit, having your release on our database, which is the kind of definitive database of recordings, it will be up there, even if we don't charge any royalties on it. So if somebody's looking for your music, the first place they go is the PRS MCPS database, and it's got a list of all the recordings. It's a geek's paradise, to be honest, and you want to have your recording on there. Beyond that, there's not much benefit to you. It's like 10 minutes out of your time to fill out the form, but it doesn't cost you anything. We don't take any money from it. In terms of Olaf's talking about joining MCPS, you can only join MCPS as a composer, songwriter, or as a publisher. You have to be the owner of the song to join MCPS. If you're a record company and you're applying to MCPS, you're a kind of customer of MCPS if you're a client, because we're collecting the royalties from you to pay to our members.
God, my head's about to explode.
That is exactly the answer to your question, though. When you said, is there a downside, is there a reason people don't do it? It's because they look at all these things they've got to do before releasing their own stuff, and they're like, oh, the PPL, oh, the MCP, oh, this, oh, fuck it, never mind. No. And you don't have to do any of this stuff. You don't have to sign up to the PPL, you don't have to sign up for the MCPS. Lots of manufacturers will let you, as long as you just send them a wee waiver saying, no, it's all my own stuff. You don't have to get a form. They will not force you to do it. You maybe should, but you don't always. And again, signing with the PPL, it's wise, but you don't have to do it. Now, if you want to release your own stuff, you just need a Bandcamp page, somebody to make you some product, and to try and do some PR for it. That's really all you need to do. You hear all this stuff, and it sounds like a nightmare, and it is a little bit daunting, and it is a lot of. And there's a lot of good reasons to do a lot of this stuff. But don't let that put you off, because really you can do it without.
If I just say one thing though, Matthew, if you join the likes of PPL, which I've got no connection with, if you get radio plays, you'll get some money from them. So it's in your interest to do that. MCPS, I kind of agree that it is a bit bureaucratic, but my office is in the West End of Glasgow, and it's an open door policy. If you're struggling with it, you phone me or you come in and see me, and I'll help you do it. I'll sit down and do it with you.
In terms of MCPS and PRS, though, for digital, it's worth it, because what happens is the retailers, like iTunes, they have their license with MCPS-PRS, and so they will pay the license fee to MCPS, and if you're not a member, it just kind of sits there unclaimed until you join. So.
Yeah, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying if you're looking at all of this mess. Yeah. Don't let this kind of stuff scare you.
Is it kind of one of these things that is really daunting, and then when you've done it once, it's kind of easy, and then you feel all right about it and stuff?
It's just a pain in the arse. It's a real pain. No, I don't mean that. Again, it's not like you shouldn't do it. It is a pain in the arse. Like, you go to the PPL, you register your song, you've got to assign the rights, you've got to come up with your ISRC code, then you've got to put all that into a metadata file. It's a real pain in the arse. But
right.
It is.
So Duncan's prepared to help you with some of it. Is there anywhere else you can go where you just have this demystified, and where it becomes a kind of more pain-free experience?
Yeah, the same way we kind of make the digital distribution process easy. There's a company called Centric Music that can make the PRS side of things a bit easier. They are effectively a publisher, and they will take a percentage, but they just kind of make it an easier interface. I don't know if anyone's used them. Or...
I was just going to say, don't self-release if you want to get out of all this. Just go with a label and they'll do it for you.
This is about
just sort of take a...
If you want to self-release, you have to just get used to it.
Do you want to just pass that mic to Paul there?
Can I just say something about the PPL? It probably is really worth joining, because I got an email from them yesterday. They were looking for guys that have released music from, I think it was the year 2004, 2005. There was over 12,000 people due royalties from sums between £0 and £50, £100, and then it's 500 plus. And I'll tell you, if you're in a band called the Saw Doctors, you're owed a lot of dough. And there's a lot of bands in Scotland that are owed a lot of money. And it's phenomenal that they're not picking it up. They've got 15 days, I think 15th October, is it?
16th of October, I think is the
Aye,
deadline.
yeah.
There are people in Scotland
Unbelievable, yeah.
who will actually do it for you for a fee. They'll do royalty research for you.
Check what you're due.
So find them. But I meant it when I said it. You know, if you're self-releasing and you want any help with the process at all, come and see me.
Can I just say as well, one little tip while it occurs to me? I had a mate who's got a label but used to be in a band on a panel last year, and they had a song called Glass Vegas before the band Glass Vegas existed, and lots of fools that didn't pay attention when they were buying stuff on iTunes bought this track Glass Vegas thinking it was the band. So they actually made a few £100 out of that. So if you can write a song that's also the name of an emerging band that lots of people are buying, then get it up there on EmuBands. Are there any other legal things that people should be aware of before they release their music? I mean, any things that are absolutely crucial? No? Okay.
Receipts, yeah.
I think we'll maybe sort of
Everything.
revisit some of the financial elements, and there's obviously the partnership things are things that the musicians union can advise you about, and how you set that up with your bandmates so that you don't end up having to give up that drum kit you got for Christmas when the band splits up and those sorts of things. Joan, could you put your hand up, please? Joan needs a cassette player or cassette recorder if anyone's got one they want to sell. And if you'd like to release an album of organ music, she's the person to see as well. So there's plenty of socializing afterwards, so stick around and do some business. I don't think we've ever facilitated the sale of a cassette player. It's usually just sort of record deals and that kind of thing. One of the things that we've touched upon already is the cost, but that's more about manufacturing and getting your music online. But really, in terms of releasing an album, what do you think's the least you could actually do it for? Shona, you can shed some light on this.
I put together my costs, so I can show you what it cost me, but I also put together a document on what it might cost if you just did like digital. Although you can't really see it. But I can talk you through it.
See it?
Yeah, like
looks quite good. I hope.
I produced my own album, so I didn't have to pay a producer. But I bought a computer, which is the top thing that says production equipment, for £2,000, so it wouldn't keep crashing when I kept loading loads and loads of channels. So my total for the album was £8,514, which is a lot more than I thought when I first set out to do it. I meant to do it for £5,000.
Is that just a record?
No, because I did all that in my house. Yeah, so it was production equipment was £2,000, but if you've got your own stuff, my computer kept crashing, so I had to buy that. I paid for 3 music videos for £1,150. CD manufacturing was £1,100, and that was for 1,000 CDs, so they worked out £1 each. So when I sell them, I get £9 profit, or 7, depending on if it's online or at gigs, or if it's 2 for 15. I did these like music boxes. I did because I paid for mine on sort of crowdfunding. So I had like various packages that people could buy, and I made these little music. Well, I didn't make them. I bought them, and then I punched in the holes to one of my tracks so that you can play it on the music box.
Can you play it? Can I get it out while you talk?
First time you've said that.
And it won't be the last.
Yeah, so I had various packages for the crowdfunding, which made some of these people put in like I think this was a £50 package, and people put in £30 and then wrote back the month later saying, "Can I top up so I can get the music box?" So a lot of people wanted the music box when I was doing the crowdfunding, though nobody's bought them on the website.
What's crowdfunding, John?
Sorry, what's crowdfunding? It's when people buy what you're going to make before you've made it. I put a video together saying that I was working on an album and that I needed $5,000 to put it out for music videos and all sorts of things, and said, people can buy like a package. So like the first package I had was £1, and it was for an MP3 of the track when it was ready, for the first track, which was the single. And then it went up to, well, I put 500 quid. It was really 100 quid was the top one, but I put a £500 package in to make £100 look like less. So, and three
What was
people
the
bought.
500 one?
Right, there was.
That's a gift for 500. So.
I brought it all. Yeah, well, I got a lot of people saying, "Will you sleep with me for that much?" No. So, CD, T-shirt, your name on the inside of the CD, the music box, treasure hunt, which I've not done yet, but I'm going to do it. Tickets to the album launch, VIP tickets to the album launch. So you got like a bottle of bubbly, which was Prosecco rather than Jacob's Creek.
Was it Little Prosecco?
No, it was
Pretty
Electric
good.
Circus Prosecco.
Excellent.
Because the album launch was here. I'm trying to think. And I got stones from Loch Ness and like wrote some lyrics on the stones. So, and I did a Polaroid picture of the album, like part of the process of making the album, and signed it. And there was lots of sort of random things that was one of a kind. And then the £500 package, you also got an instrument from my studio signed that was used on the album.
Did anyone buy that?
Yeah, 3 people.
Right, so you got 500 quid. That's
I was
great.
totally shocked, though. I never thought anyone would buy.
Who were they?
One guy I used to work with, and he'd just been made redundant, and he thought it would be a good idea to. It was fabulous for me.
I mean, do you know how they came to know about you?
No.
Internet.
Yeah, internet. Yeah, Facebook probably. But I did a lot of promotion on social media. And I was saying before to Duncan that I didn't have a lot of fans as such. I probably had like 30 to 40. And I just sent it out to everybody I know. And I think half the people I know funded the album. And the rest, the people who were involved, there were some people from Twitter that were really excited by the video and the random things like Stone from Loch Ness, which went down really well in America. And they were all telling their friends, and they were putting it on their blogs, and they were promoting it for me. And every time somebody put money in, I would put it on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you to so-and-so who's just put in this much. And that invariably somebody else then put money in immediately, shamed into it by a stranger.
Wow. Was there any downside to doing this?
Yeah, if you don't reach the total, well, I did it on Sponsor Me, so if you don't reach the total, you don't get any money. So people were pledging to put X amount into it, but then if you didn't reach the total, they'd get their money back. So it was a wee bit hair-raising in the last few days, but I got there 2 days early, so I was all right.
And do you decide what the time frame is, or is there just a set time frame?
Yeah, you can put your own time frame, but they give you guidance saying like if you do anything more than 6 months, people probably will not. It's too far in the future for people to be interested now. So there was kind of guidelines, but I think I did it over 3 months.
And what kind of cut do they take? Which
Sponsor Me do 10%.
Right.
Which I didn't realise until they took it. So I put £5,000. You have to add 10% to what it's going to cost you. And I would say put in a contingency, because mine went up to 8 grand. And so it was 3,000 over, which is a lot more than I was expecting. But also I was working with Leith Records, they were great. It's from Leith Advertising Agency, and they had loads of great ideas. They came up with the idea of this seed paper, which I also paid for, which is like, my album's called The Seed. So you plant it and it grows into wildflowers, which is cool. And it also has my logo on it. So that was cool. But they then made loads of people redundant. So half the things I said I was going to do, they couldn't do for the price. So I'd put in £1,000 for all marketing and design of various, they were going to do like exciting apps, design of apps and things like that. So that all kind of fell through when those people left. So then I had to spend a lot more money than I expected. But I also put together this other page, which was like how cheaply I think you can do it. Basically says miscellaneous was like 327 quid, and that was for, like, we did music videos. The first one was like a stop frame cardboard animation. We cardboarded my entire living room and then tore a little piece and took a picture and tore a little piece. And that cost like 100 quid to hire a softbox light, to buy a 75-metre roll of cardboard and cutting knives and all sorts, little bits and pieces that were necessary. Mastering, I've said 50 quid because I mean you could probably do it yourself on if you get Ozone, but it depends how good you want it to sound.
What's Ozone?
It's a program that just masters for you. You've got like settings that are like or isotope.
So, how many folk from Julianesque are still in here? Right, so you've got like some real. How many studios have you got? About a dozen or something. So, I guess you can do that's already like the mastering taken care of in the college. What about Napier? Have you got that sort of kit as well? So there you go. That's about half the audience have got access to some really top quality studios and studio knowledge. So I would say that those of half of you that aren't at Julianesque or Napier, find someone that is and buy them a pint. I think that there's a lot of ways that you can get free help or downtime or people that are willing to do stuff, and I think that's been very much your experience, hasn't it?
Totally, yeah. I've asked for favours from every single person I know. I got my friend to do the website. He's doing a design degree, so I was just like, portfolio. But he's been fantastic. Like he's done loads. The brand identity, I went through students through Leith, the advertising agency. They did a hot desking opportunity for graduates to put forward ideas, and I paid 500 quid for the brand identity, which is quite a lot of money, but at the same time I wanted to do something worthwhile for a graduate as well. So
what is the brand identity involved then? Is that
it was,
the logo? Or?
Yeah, it's the font and the logo and the colours and which I probably wouldn't do that again because it was 500 quid and that was quite a big expense, but I didn't know that at the time, and I had to choose from like the 6 that came in. So I sat down and I was shown 6. I think there was more than that, and they pulled it down to 6, and then I chose one of the 6. But yeah, so that was a big cost, but you could probably get somebody to do that for a project, or if you know anybody who's good at design, just get them to do it.
Obviously, the music is fundamental. If you're making terrible music that's really badly recorded, then people are less likely to listen to it, even if you have got beautiful packaging. But notwithstanding that, I mean, how would you rank the things that you should really be doing if you are on a limited budget and you're about to release something?
Well, the music first, I would say it has to be good, because there's no point in spending all the effort if the music's been sort of chucked together. Marketing, I would say, is really, really important. And PR, getting somebody to do blogs and promotion. Somebody gave me a piece of advice which was quite useful, which was, do you know Elbows? It's like, I can't remember what the website is. Something like,
website.
Yeah.
elbo.ws is the URL for it, and it's just a load of music blogs and music websites.
Yeah, so it's quite a good idea to go find somebody that, everybody hates to pigeonhole themselves, but if you find somebody that's similar to what you do, then you can pitch your release to the bloggers that wrote about that music and say, like, I read your article on this and I think you'll like this, you know, that, and that's quite a good way to get lots of bloggers to write or to represent you.
So assuming you've got Ali to get your stuff in every digital store in the world, and Karen's pressed you some nice vinyl and a CD option as well, for selling in shops and selling when you're on tour. I mean, how much time should you leave to prepare before you actually put it out there? What's a kind of optimal time, Matthew?
It depends an awful lot on what kind of a release it is. I've just got 4 different timelines, and it's, you can see along the bottom there, that's just the timeline. It goes from 0 to 16 weeks. That's 4 months before your release, and 4 months is not that generous, actually. Even at 4 months, you have to be efficient and you're cutting it quite fine. But like I said, it depends very much on the release. So I've got 4 different models here, basically. 4 different ways of skinning more or less the same cat. That's not true, actually. It's 4 different ways of skinning slightly different cats. So basically, I think before you start the promotional period for anything, there's a list of things you've got to get ready. And you've got to have all these things done before you even consider picking a release date. This is for a digital-only release. So you've got to have your album uploaded, and I would have said to a private SoundCloud or Bandcamp link. That has to be done before you even pick a release date, because you need that to send to reviewers. You need a zip file. I hope you know what zip files are. But if you don't, ask someone. But you need a zip file with all the MP3s of the album, a one sheet, which is basically all the data for the release, like who the band are, your website, some quotes, that if there are any, some nice quotes to give people a reason to pay attention, and a little bit of a story about the band and the release, just on one sheet of paper or a PDF. And then you need the album artwork. So you need a zip file with all of your MP3s, the album artwork, and your one sheet. You also already need to have your stuff registered with the PRS if you're going to do that, which, as I said, you don't have to, but you probably should. You already need to have it uploaded to somebody like EmuBands, or I use TuneCore, who are pretty good. I think CD Baby do that as well. You need to have that all in place already. This is just for a digital-only release, you need a blog list, and as Shona says, like, go to Elbows or Shuffler.fm or the Hype Machine. Do you all know the Hype Machine? Like, these are all just directories of blogs. And just go through all these blogs and find out about who's writing about the kind of stuff roughly that you make. And make a list of those blogs so that you've got a press list. Go to online radio, like places like Amazing Radio. Look at Mixcloud, which is a collection of podcasts. Or BBC Introducing. So you've got to have a list of anybody who's playing roughly, again, the right kind of music for you. Yeah. Sorry, Best of British as well. I don't know them, I have to confess. Is that podcasts? Yeah. Promo shots of the band. These are, it sounds stupid, but these are really important. Probably good to put them in the zip download with the MP3s.
Could I just say this as well? It's quite an important point. We had a music journalist seminar a few months ago, and all of these journalists said that they wanted some quality, at least one quality image. You can look at that, we've put that on the website, but because someone actually asked, how do you get reviewed? This is something it's fundamental. People don't think about doing it, but it's really important to have a decent photograph or two. And also in a large enough size that it can be printed.
It's not just for grown-up journalists, like a print. We're talking about a digital-only release here. It doesn't, but actually, Tumblr blogs are really on the rise right now, and they're very, very visual. And having a nice, striking image is really helpful for things like that as well. I think a lot of amateur writers really appreciate a good picture.
If you're at Jewel and Esther, I guess it's soon to be Edinburgh College, so. Is it now already? So go and hit up the ones that are in what was Telford. They've got a photography department. And Stevenson's the other one. So basically 2/3 of Edinburgh College now has photography options. So cross the city and use them while they're still free.
Can I jump in and say, I've had loads of photographers asking me if I would mind if they come to my gigs and take pictures of me. And they're willing to pay to get in, and you think, so it's definitely worth, I think, contacting all the colleges and the students and putting posters up in sort of student areas, because there's people needing experience, and you're in a situation where you can give that to them without them having to ask you. But yeah.
Do you want to?
Yeah, could I just say, what would you say was ideal for press time? Because, assuming old-fashioned media, I mean, blogs can go straight up there, but old-fashioned media have quite a long.
This is kind of what I'm getting into here. Is if you look here, this is the absolute bare minimum. If you want to release an album for virtually nothing, this is the kind of thing you're looking at. It's a digital-only release. I'd almost say you have to put it up on Bandcamp. It's by far the best way to sell direct to your fans. They take a percentage, but it's no money up front and things like that. It's really helpful. I think you'd be daft not to put it up through all the other media as well. But a Bandcamp page is like your bare minimum. But that means you've got to have all of these things ready before you start. And if you're going to do a minimum three-week digital-only campaign, like you've got no money, you're not really trying to push it out there that much. 3 weeks before the album release, you put out the first single, And you can use something like SoundCloud, or again, you can use Bandcamp to get it up through your social networks, put it on Facebook page, get people to share it around, try and get people to retweet it, all this kind of stuff. Just put it out there. Say, look, this is the first single. The album's coming in 3 weeks. 2 weeks before the release date, you email all the bloggers and all of those online radio people that you've made a list of, explain why you're emailing them, and include links. Never attach anything to the email, but just include links to that private stream of the whole album and to the zip download so they can download it if they want to, things like that, and basic information about the band. Then maybe a week before the release, put up a second song, say, yeah, album releases in a week's time, and then on the day, again, out through your social networks, and if you've got a mailing list, which is a really good thing to have, because, I mean, our label, like, so much of the stuff that we sell comes when we email the mailing list. And you can do it in 3 weeks like that. It's a really minimal release schedule. If you want to be a little bit more focused, you can do, again, this is an online-only kind of a release. And I'm doing this, basically, this is to keep costs to a minimum, because if you're going to send out stuff to journalists, you have to get PR copies made. The cost for that can rack up. But if you want to just do it through online means, like just use your private SoundCloud stream or a private Bandcamp stream, you can still do a relatively comprehensive campaign. The difference for this is it takes a bit longer. There's a couple of extra things you need. If you want to have an actual manufactured product, again, you've got to have that ready before you even start, because production snafus can really cause problems if you don't have it ready in advance. And the other extra thing you'll need then is an online press list for a lot of the really good online magazines that there are at the moment. Drowned in Sound are really good. The Line of Best Fit, the 405, This Is Fake DIY, God Is in the TV. These guys need a little bit longer than a traditional blog, so you're looking at a longer campaign to get through to them. Some of them ask for 6 weeks. But again, you've got to have that list ready before you start. Then, in this case, 6 weeks before the release date, you go to the online magazines, you email them through the link and the download code. Most of them on the contact page, you've got the album reviews editor, so you find that person and you email them. Because it's sort of spread out and you're doing a more comprehensive campaign, maybe you spread out the single releases a bit. So maybe 5 weeks beforehand, you email your mailing list, you put it up on Facebook, you put it on Twitter, here's the first single. Again, in much the same way as you did, just put a SoundCloud link, a SoundCloud player out that people can share. Or if you've got a video, that's really good. People love videos at the moment. Then maybe a couple of weeks beforehand, again, you email blogs, the same as before, and you push that second single out to your fans, your existing fans through social media, and then on the day of release, you make your little announcement. Taking it up a little bit, this is what I mean. Like you can do it in 3 weeks if you really want to undersell, or if you're don't have that much money to invest, or if you don't particularly want to be a professional artist. If you want to hit, that's not a criticism. I know lots of people who don't want to quit the day job. They don't. The biggest problem with being a professional artist is then suddenly you have to give a shit whether Ali McCrone likes your music. And no, because you're dependent on PRS, you're dependent on selling records, you have to worry about whether you've got a swear word in your songs. If you want to just have a day job, then you don't have to give a shit and you can make the kind of music you want. I know a lot of people who do that. But if you really want to properly publicize a full album, it does take you best part of 4 months. So I've got in there prep period from 16 weeks to 12 weeks beforehand. But in addition to all the other things I've mentioned already, again, before you even start the campaign for this, you need to add on top of it a press list, like actual print press. And it's not just things like Mojo and Uncut. It's things like, the Stool Pigeon and, a lot of these free zines and stuff like that. Loud and Quiet's really good. The Fly is really good. People like the Skinny and the List in Scotland do a great job of covering local music. And again, you look for either the music editor or the album reviews editor, or in some cases, just look for the writers who consistently write about stuff you like and find them on Twitter and get in touch with them.
Sort of stress that, because this is something that somehow ends up getting woven into every panel, but anyone that's involved in writing about music hates getting generic emails. Just take the trouble to find out who you're writing to. That is a lot more effective.
That applies to amateurs. Amateurs can get quite prissy about that, to be honest. They didn't even bother to send me a proper email. It's like, well, you have fucking 20 people a year read your blog. But but they still really want it. And for professional writers, yeah, they want to. We get a lot more, again, for the label, we get a lot more write-ups from freelance writers who are really keen on the label than we ever do from just sending it to reviews editor at Uncut Magazine. And I always do that because I don't want to let the bands down or not do my job properly. But a freelance writer who really likes you is really valuable. So you're better off cultivating 3 or 4 of those relationships, and you'll get a lot more out of it. And you can do that via Twitter. And don't push to them. Just join in the conversation. If they say something you agree with, say something back, and slowly but surely you'll become pals, and then, or at least, acquaintances. And then you say, look, we're releasing an album. I think you actually might like it. Would you be interested in listening? Most of them will say yes. But again, this is stuff you have to have ready beforehand, and you have to have now physical promo copies. If you're going to go through all of this, you have to make physical promo copies. And Tom Robinson's website's got a really good breakdown of how to put together it's just the basic data, again, on the front, like contact name, name of the release date, a couple of suggested tracks for people who can't be asked listening to the whole thing. It's especially important if your first song is a 15-minute abstract instrumental build-up, which works great for the album, but if somebody just puts it in and presses play, they're going to turn it off in 20 seconds' time. So again, you've got to have that, and it takes a month to put this kind of stuff together, just to get your promo copies manufactured, just to make sure you've got everything uploaded, just to make sure you've got all your press lists ready. Then it needs to be at least 12 weeks in advance, you post your physical promo copies to people who write for print media. Bear in mind, like a magazine, it probably takes them a month to print and distribute it. Probably takes them a month to put it together, and it probably takes 4 weeks for somebody to be asked opening the letter you sent them and actually putting it in the CD player. So 12 weeks is, minimum. Then you've got kind of a bit of time off, to be honest. 6 weeks later, again, you go back into the same process as before. Online magazines, announce your first single. 4 weeks in advance, you send your copies to radio. Now, people will say 6 weeks in advance, but that's only if you really are determined to get playlisted. And if you're self-releasing, the chances of you getting playlisted are virtually nil. Now, when we send stuff to radio, they play it more or less immediately or not at all. Now, we have had some luck when we've paid radio pluggers. They do a very good job. But if you're self-releasing and you're cutting costs, do not pay a radio plugger. Usually your music is quite specialist. You can find the shows that are likely to play it and just send it straight to them. We've had good results. Gideon Co., 6 Music, BBC London. And he opened it, read it, and played the very first thing we sent him back before anybody had the slightest idea who we are. And we're only a touch above that now.
I think 6 Music are particularly good for that. Certain shows that they don't expect the band to have a huge promotional campaign or marketing campaign.
And to be slightly cynical, Gideon Co. has got 3 hours a night, 4 days a week. He's got a lot of time to fill. So of all the people, he's going to be probably the most receptive. But he's a really nice guy.
I think that locally as well, it's worth mentioning that Vic Galloway does listen to everything that he's sent, him and his producer, but also someone who, again, is on more than once a week, is Ian Anderson, who you mentioned earlier. So you've got many more opportunities to get played there if you're doing something that's got a country or a folky feel to it. And it's a pretty broad. And
again, this is a good guideline. This comes to whether you're pitching to record labels, whether you're pitching to amateur blogs, whether you're pitching to professional shows. Like, don't just fire out stuff to absolutely every last person. Have some sensitivity of what they play, what they're interested in. I get people pitching me hip hop. I wouldn't know good hip hop from bad hip hop, and it's obvious. Like, I've got 2,500 posts on my site. I've mentioned hip hop once, and that was to say I don't understand it. And people still pitch me hip hop, and it's a total waste of your time, and it will really annoy people. So much better to be more focused. Pick the people you really think will like it, and focus on them. But that's a full 12-week process for releasing a full album. Now, if you want to be really smart-assed, then you include your singles in that as well, and you make promo copies of the singles, and you start to pitch them. And I've got the first single coming in here at about 15 weeks before you release. So this will be. I'll put this available. I'll put this up as a PDF or something. You can have a look at it. It's a bit much to go through, but when you get to this level, you either need a very good manager, a decent label, or you need to be a lot more organized than most musicians I've ever met. Musicians don't need labels in particular. It's just that in practice, musicians usually do, because they're focused on being musicians. There's nothing a label does that a musician can't do. It's just usually you're focused on other things. Our job is to just be admin bitches and just do this repetitive. It's really disheartening. Now, honestly, self-releasing is disheartening. You will send out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of emails, and most of them will be ignored. And you have to train yourself not to worry about that, because it gets me down, and I don't even make the music that we release. Now, if you're self-releasing and you're putting out your own stuff, it's really depressing. And then you'll get some smart-ass blogger emailing you back, like I do sometimes. It's like, why the fuck have you sent this to me? And then you'll want to know where they live. And yeah. But I think I've put this out here, and I've talked probably too much, but it's so important to follow this kind of a structure, because if you miss these dates, you will get fuck all. There've been times when I've just ballsed it up, just not out of malice, not out of not believing in the music, but just made mistakes and missed my deadlines. Things have gone out a bit too late, and you honestly, you get nothing. If you don't give print press at least 12 weeks, you will get nothing. You might get nothing anyway. And really, if you want to cut corners, print press is probably a good one if you're self-releasing, because you don't get much out of them. But, and if you miss that 6-week deadline for online magazines, you're cutting the amount of coverage you're going to get. If you don't give radio at least a couple of weeks in advance, just for it to get sorted through all the
Can I just say as well, it's worth finding out what the deadlines are. That's got, sometimes if you get someone on deadline day and they might have, even with the best will in the world, I've got a monthly column, and I remember something a lot of the time after I've finished it, and I'm like, shit, I wish they'd reminded me, because I wanted to write about them, but they'd mentioned it to me a month before. So it's okay to give someone a little nudge, and also it's good to find out when people's deadlines are. Without dwelling on this time thing so much, I wanted to move on to something that you touched upon. You mentioned singles, and you've obviously been talking about album campaigns. One of the things that's really interested me is this obsession with the album, and whether that's necessarily the best thing to be doing if you're self-releasing. And Ali, I wanted to ask you about this, because I imagine you've got an insight into people releasing a whole album of 10 tracks, or people releasing an EP maybe with 3 tracks. Is it still common for consumers to buy a whole album online, or do you find that they'll just cherry pick a few tunes?
Yeah, you still do get bundle sales. I mean, they've not gone completely, but yeah, cherry picking is definitely the way things are going. I mean, Spotify, for example, is just track only. You can't stream a bundle, you can't get a bundle royalty from there. But yeah, I mean, what a lot of people do is, rather than kind of save up the 10 tracks and release an album, is put out 3 EPs, just so there's a kind of fresh material a bit more often, rather than this huge build up to one album.
And do you find that if a band would say released 3 EPs, so let's say one EP's got 4 tracks instead of 3, do you find that people are more likely to buy all the tracks on an EP as opposed to just taking the one?
Well, I mean, it really depends, case by case basis. You can put the bundle up for slightly cheaper than the sum of tracks. So I mean, it really depends on the release.
It depends a lot on genre as well. I think a lot of different genres have different habits. Like I release, as my wife describes it, moaning indie pish, where people still are really quite into albums. A lot of dance music and hip hop is very track orientated. So I think it depends a lot on the audience and the style of music too.
I mean, in your experience, do you find is beneficial to, especially with artists in their early stages, they're developing, just to put out EPs rather than an album, so you've got something to shout about every few months rather than maybe once every 18 months?
Yeah, it is useful. It's a good way of doing it. I'm a record label though, so I tend to take my cue from the artist. To be honest, EPs and singles are really good, but most of the artists I work with find an album to be a definitive statement of who they are. They've been a musician their whole lives, and they want that album. And I think to a large degree, a lot of the fans in the kind of music that I release are still think that way as well. They love EPs, they love singles. Singles are really good for creating initial interest and things like that, and establishing, like if a band hasn't been in the studio before and things like that, and they're not sure how they're going to react with the engineer, that kind of stuff, that's really useful. But most bands I know want to.
So would you suggest then if you're putting out your first release, it's worth just doing a single or an EP?
Well, most bands will have some half-decent demos, or at least some reasonably representative demos. And as long as they're not shit, you need to be careful, like, because if you release something, it sticks with you for a long time. So don't release anything you don't like. You know, it is, you know, you'll get tarnished with that if it's crap, and you will resent it as well, and you don't want to do that. But yeah, it's a really good way to just to kick things off a little bit, I think.
Talked a lot about the physical and the digital. There are certain things though which will help you sell records in a digital store and in a bricks and mortar store. I mean, what tips do you have for that? I mean, I know what was it? Merceau sold hundreds of one album in Avalanche, and I know similar things happen in Coda music with more folky or traditional music. How do you get retailers on board?
Be nice to them and give them. Shops are running scared at the moment, to be honest with you, because most of them are going out of business. So, for example, for one of the albums, we sold out of the vinyl, we've pressed it to CD, we've put the CD out through our distributors, and we're pressing like a CD of remixes of the album by various people, just in little card sleeves. It's not that expensive. And we're saying that's only available through record shops. So if you can give them favors like that, that's always appreciated. If you just take an interest, to be honest with you, so, you know, go in, offer to play in stores, talk to them. I mean, there's not that many record shops left. I mean, nationwide distribution is really good once you're touring nationwide. If you're not touring nationwide yet, there's no point having a record in a record shop in Bristol, because nobody in Bristol knows who you are or cares. And you can, you know, Scotland is a very small country and it's parochial, and that can be sounds like an insult, but it's a real advantage if you're musically based, because people in Scotland care about Scottish bands, and record shops in Scotland care about Scottish bands. And there's 5 record shops that you could, I mean, Central Belt, you just think, go and speak to the guys in Mono, go and speak to the guys in Love Music. If you're, you know, specialist in different genres, you know, you'll know which the shops are. And just go and have a word with them, offer to sell things, and then drive your fans to that place, and they will then have an incentive to push your release, because they'll see that you're doing something for them.
How does it work in the digital world?
Yeah, I mean, each kind of retailer has its own processes. For example, iTunes, you kind of apply for features. As mentioned earlier on, the kind of one-sheet idea, we just need the information, as much information as possible on a one-pager from the artist as far in advance as possible. And then we just kind of put that through the application process. Sometimes they'll go for it, sometimes they won't. But every retailer has its own, like some of them you can just email them like 2 weeks before the release date saying, we recommend this single, they'll listen to it, they'll feature it. You know, some like V7 can build like artist-focused radio stations, for example. So there's a lot of options out there.
Are there any sort of things that are useful to have when you're pitching them, or any things that would increase your chances other than obviously having good music?
I think it works the same as getting press coverage. It's exactly the same idea. You know, the more that's surrounding the release, the more other people that are going to be featuring it, the better press quotes you've got. You know, it's the same as trying to get a review, basically.
Could you just remind me how much on a 10 track album would you roughly expect to get from an average digital store?
Varies between store, about between £4 and £5.
And what about with a record shop, Matthew? I mean, what are you selling an album to?
Not too different, to be honest with you. It depends a lot on the recommended retail price that you want, but it can be very difficult to force them to adhere to that. But usually, I think if we're giving somebody an album we want them to sell for £8, we're getting about about £5 for it. We sell vinyl usually £12, and we tend to ask for about £8 for that. So we do take a hefty chunk. But you know, like I said, if you get a retailer on board and they really like that record, they can sell a lot of albums for you.
Are there any things sort of packaging things that work particularly well that you've been aware of, Karen? I mean, are there any unusual things that retailers also like that have gone down well with shops?
Well, there's we spoke about this sort of briefly before, and I think one of the things that you were saying to me is certainly in the past, what the retailers didn't like was odd-sized things that they couldn't stock on their shelves. But I don't think that's happening anymore at all. I think people will take what they think that they can sell. Certainly, in my experience, as I said before, I think a lot of more interesting packages will sort of cast a person's eye towards them, and certainly sort of someone will want to pick something up. Again, as I said, vinyl is very, very popular at the moment. It's big. There's something to touch, to feel, to look at. There's a lot of things that our labels are doing, cutouts on the front of the album, foil blocking, embossing, debossing, using all sorts of different types of materials. But again, one thing that you've got to remember with doing really interesting packaging that people might go towards, it's a lot more expensive because it's not standard material that the printers have lying around, and it takes longer to manufacture, and the price goes up quite considerably.
There's another benefit to it, though. It's a bit of a double-edged sword. It's like you say, you have to be very careful with this because it is expensive. But what we found, like with some of our more nicely packaged stuff, is that it has a real social network value to it, particularly in the days of Instagram. Like we've put out posh vinyl, and what we find is that everybody, like almost everybody who gets a copy, takes a picture of it and puts it on their Facebook page or in their Twitter feed saying, fuck me, look at this is amazing. And that kind of stuff. Like, we're still a very small label. We still struggle to get good press, really. Sometimes we get great results, but sometimes we really don't. And getting that kind of stuff, like having things like videos and really nice stuff like that, it lets your fans help you out a little bit and gives them something to pass around, and it can be really
pass
valuable.
that around. You've got
this has been getting amazing press everywhere, and it's been sort of featured in a lot of sort of creative magazines. Please give it back to me, I'll get killed. It's an album by Cave Painting. I'll find this.
How much is that able album?
The Amon Tobin album sells for £100.
So while Karen's handing stuff out for you to admire, does anyone have any questions?
I'll send some other bits and pieces that are really interesting packaging around, but as I say, please give them back to me.
Just repeat this so it's on tape.
You're
as
asking
well.
if it's still important to send out physical promos. Well, we're about to find out because Yusuf Azak's second album's coming out soon, and he specifically told us not to bother. It's an expense you can avoid, I think. I think a lot of writers are happy now with a stream or a download. You have to offer them the choice, but I think you can do away with it. I do think. Again, it's like if you're self-releasing or if you're a very small label, the chances of getting featured in the kind of place that demands physical promos is very, very small. Physical promos I find most useful for, though, are radio, because they just lie around the office and somebody picks one up. So I find physical promos really useful for radio. For press and reviews, I think you can probably get away without them and not lose out on too much. I think actually for press and reviews, you could probably do away with print media and you wouldn't miss out on very much. It's a lot of work, it's quite expensive, and your chances of getting anything from it as a small label or a self-release are pretty slender. So I think, I think you could go with digital-only promo.
Duncan.
Like I said, you might lose out on radio a bit. If you want to get something on the playlist, you have to be phoning up the head of music of that station and pitching them directly, and you need to give them a good 6 weeks. Again, as a self-release or a small label, the chances of success for something like that are very, very, very small. So really, I don't think you need to send anything to radio more than about 3 weeks in advance of that.
Duncan, you want to say something about
it was just a little cautionary tale about physical promo copies. If you're putting other people's music on it, we actually require you to mark it promotional, not for sale. Now, if it's your own material, it's up to you whether you do that or not. But just a kind of experience I had, if you're sending out physical product and it's not marked as a promotional or a review copy, what I personally discovered was that if you're carpet bombing reviewers and radio stations, there are people and companies who are buying up the review copies that aren't being reviewed, because my album, for instance, isn't everybody's cup of tea, so it'll go to some radio stations, they'll just think they won't even bother looking at it. So somebody comes in, they buy a bag of review copies, and I was buying my own album for a penny on Amazon, plus £1.30 postage. So these guys who were paying nothing, they were maybe paying 30 quid for a bag of CDs. They were selling, maybe spending 40 pence in postage and charging £1.30. So they're maybe lifting 60 or 70 pence on selling people's artists' albums, having made no investment in it at all. You know, so it's just something to be kind of aware of. You know, I think it's a good idea to put this a review copy on. Maybe take the shrink wrap off, put a sticker on it. It's up to you if it's your own material, whether you're cool with people doing that. But I think it's a bit off. You know, if people are selling your album. Doesn't do your. I ended up buying my own albums off Amazon to just get them off there. You know.
And how do you get paid with physical distribution?
Yeah, you either get a distributor, in which case it's in the contract and it's a good few months in arrears, but you get paid. Alternatively, if you're doing your own distribution and you go to half a dozen record shops and ask them to stock your stuff, some people will pay up front, but not many. Usually what they want to do is sale or return. So you bring them 10 and you go back to them and you have to keep going back to them. And a few weeks later, you know, well, probably actually a few months later, you say, hey, how's that doing? Do you need any more? And then they'll ask you to invoice them for the ones that you've sold, and then they'll forget to pay the invoice, and then you have to phone them up. And then these guys, again, don't have a lot of money, so getting money out of them can be a real challenge. And don't give them too many at once, because if they go bust, you will lose the fucking lot. Self-release artists may be less of an issue. For us as a label, that's a serious issue, because we have a lot of stock out with small independent record shops that we've self-distributed, and we have to invoice them, and you have to, because we're not a major company, we can't deny them very much. You have to gently remind them often, but not in a way that pisses them off and makes them not want to pay you. Because if they just stonewall you forever, they probably can. So you don't have much of a leg to stand on. But yeah, you just have to keep going back to them and asking how it's sold. If they want any more, is it ready? Is it time to invoice? It's a pain in the neck, but there's not that many record shops, so it is still feasible.
Just get the drummer to go in and ask for the money.
He's got an assistant that does it for him now. Yeah? He looks menacing.
Before we close off, just a little quick plug. A little while back, I wrote a sort of a guide to self-releasing your own album, because it was just because people kept asking me, because they were my friends and they wanted to self-release and they knew I'd release some stuff. So I've got a few copies of it here, and it covers a lot of the stuff we've talked about. Not so much of the collection agency stuff, I have to confess, because at the time I wrote it, I didn't know much about that. But I've got a few copies of it here, or alternatively on Song by Toad, if you go to the contact or the about page, there's a wee link to it. You can download it as a PDF for nothing. So if anybody wants it, it's just a lot of this stuff written down and a few handy lists and some stuff like that. So
we'll put, to give us a plug as well, we'll put something on the Barnaby Wide Facebook. So if you've not liked it yet, like it. It's just facebook.com/BarnabyWide. Some point we'll have a video of this seminar with all the rude bits edited out, or anything that might be legally problematic.
Can I just ask, did you ever get the music box to work? Because it's Susan Sarandon's birthday today.
Okay. Well then.
And Alicia Silverstone.
Right, you do the honors, yeah. This is for Susan Sarandon. Is that the one out of Thelma and Louise?
Can you hear it?
Is that happy birthday?
It's so quiet.
You stick on a biscuit tin.
Do we not have to pay PRS if it's right? That'll be edited out of the video as well.